Hello and welcome to Paradigm Playbook, a podcast for entrepreneurs in the business of sports. Your hosts, Dave Kozak and Steve Cook, are business owners, successful entrepreneurs, sports enthusiasts, avid readers, and longtime friends. For years, they've read every business book on the market and built successful companies with what they've learned. This podcast will give you the critical takeaways in just 15 minutes a week. It's a quick and easy playbook for building a winning sports business. And now, here are your hosts, Dave and Steve.
If you have any business-related questions, feel free to send them over to us at paradigmplaybook.com. We're here to help.
Welcome to Paradigm Playbook. I'm Steve Cook, and I'm not alongside my co-host, Dave Kozak. Dave is out on assignment coaching this week. So joining us today is a close friend, my brother, Bruce Cook, who has been in the sports business for most of his professional life. And today we thought we'd dig into sponsorship a bit. So welcome, Bruce.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So as I said, Bruce has been in the sponsorship end of sports, but started out as an athlete. Rather than me give your background, Bruce, why don't you give us the 2-minute version of your background and how you've been involved in sponsorships?
Yeah, you always introduce me by saying I started out as an athlete, and yes, I played sports, but I don't think I ever really considered myself much of an athlete. But that's a debate for another time.
I'm comparing you to me, so you're a premier athlete.
Yeah. Okay. Sponsorship. My whole career has been in sports, and most of it has been in sponsorship. In the earliest days, going back to the 90s, I worked for a company called ProServe that ran professional tennis. And one of my roles there was sponsor servicing. So I was taking care of sponsors, making sure they were happy. I then went to work for the U.S. Olympic Committee, where I was in what was called the corporate services department. And we, again, were responsible for looking after sponsors, helping to run sponsorship programs, and making sure they got value for their investment. I then moved over to Scotland, which is where I'm sitting today. And I was working for a team in the NFL Europe League. I was the commercial director, which was largely responsible for selling sponsorships and keeping them happy. I then ran a basketball team for a couple of years and tried to sell sponsorship for them as well. Ultimately went to work for a big bank in Scotland that was big into sponsorship, and I was specifically in the sponsorship department. Ultimately became their head of sponsorship, and we sponsored throughout my years there everything from major rugby tournaments and teams to 3 of the 4 golf majors to tennis player Andy Murray, and lots of Formula One and auto racing and all kinds of stuff like that. And lastly, I spent a stint of time working for a big research company called YouGov Sport that did measurement and analysis of sponsorship effectiveness. So sponsorship has been part of my professional life for a long time.
So, and I like the background because you were on all sides of it. You were on the rights holder side. You were on the side that was, looking to benefit from the rights holder, and then you were on the measurement side of it. So before we dig into any one of the sides, the question that comes up to me, and I'm much more in the entrepreneurial space, working with small businesses, and very often I hear, well, we're just not big enough to get sponsors. So what are your thoughts on sponsorship for small business? Is it worth doing? Is there a reasoning behind it, or do you have no thoughts on it?
No, I definitely have some thoughts, and I suppose I didn't finish completely my story, my background, and I should mention that I now find myself as an entrepreneur myself. Okay. I've started a new business called Sponsor Lab that is a piece of software that's designed to help measure sponsorship. So I know what it feels like to be an entrepreneur running a small business. And by small business, I mean, you're looking at it. It's me, aside from when you try to help me, Steve. But yes, so sponsorship, is it worth it for a small business? Absolutely. It takes on a different guise, but it also reminds me of when I first went for my interview with the Royal Bank of Scotland. And this is a company that was spending in sponsorship, high six figures, low seven figures on individual sponsorships. So it was big money. And they asked me a question. They said, "What's the biggest sponsorship you've ever dealt with?" And at that point, the biggest deal I had dealt with, I think, was, either with the NFL Europe League team or, in the basketball team I had been working with. It was, a low to mid five figures. It was like 40,000 pounds or something like that. It was the biggest thing I had worked with. And even that's going to be big for a lot of small businesses now. But the response I get, or the advice I got, was the principles are exactly the same. It doesn't matter how many zeros are at the end of it. The principles are the same. And if you can do it at that level, you can do it at this level. So I look at it, in preparation for today, I was thinking about it. And whether you're a 5K run, a gymnastics club, a sports facility, whatever it might be, you're always looking for revenue to help yourself grow and improve and run your business. And sponsorship is a place that you should always be looking. So it's definitely relevant for a small business. The numbers will be smaller, but the overall budget is smaller too. So the impact of a sponsorship can still be very important.
Yeah, I find myself now in a position where I see both sides of it. I'm looking for sponsors for our sports facility, our sports business. But then I also sponsor local leagues, things like that. And I find that the sponsorship discussion, and maybe this is me and you can correct me, but I find the sponsorship discussion is lively up to the point of deal making. So in other words, it's like, we can put a banner in our facility. We can do this. We have, so many thousands of eyeballs on it a week. We can do this. So it's the sales process. And then they say, okay, well, in small deal, we'll give you $1,000 for that visibility. And then, to my fault or everyone's fault, I guess, we don't discuss it again until it comes up for renewal. So am I in a strange situation, or do you find that normal?
That's very normal at the grassroots, at the lower level for smaller businesses and smaller sponsorships. Surprisingly, it's all too prevalent at big sponsorships too. And that's kind of the issue that I'm trying to attack with my new business. But I know it's not uncommon at all that there's an old saying that I first heard back in the early 90s at a US Olympic Congress speech, when somebody said, sponsorship is not charity. And the meaning of that is that sponsorship is a marketing investment. There is something expected in return. So the rights holder or the business or the sports facility that's looking for sponsorship always has to keep that in mind. However, especially at the lower level, there is an element of a charitable mindset. So when you're sponsoring something locally, a big part of why you're doing it is probably because you want to help. So it does get into that charitable space. You believe in what they're doing and you want to help. Now, that doesn't mean you don't want anything in return, but there is that element of it. And I think you're absolutely right, in highlighting the fact that too often the conversation stops as soon as the transaction is made. And that's the problem. It's sponsorship as a transaction is somewhat doomed from the start. If all it is a transaction, I give you money, you give me whatever rights it is, or a banner or some tickets or whatever it might be, and there's that exchange, and that's all there is to it. It's not then a real partnership. That's advertising. Sponsorship is different. You hear people more and more using the word partnership instead of sponsorship, and that's it's almost done just to psychologically remind themselves and remind those involved that, hey, this flows both ways. We're working together here now to try and achieve an outcome. It's not just about I'm buying something from you. I was at a conference a few months ago in London, and there was a guy from Pepsi up there, and he oversees hundreds of sponsorships globally. And he was talking about the fact that if you're in a situation where you're kind of afraid of what the measurement is going to show, you're not in a partnership, you're in a transactional relationship, because you basically opted out once the check was signed or the contract was signed. In a real partnership, even at the level where it's $1,000 for a banner in the gym or whatever, that should still be a partnership. And there needs to be continuous dialogue and evaluation as to, is it working?
Yeah, I think one of the problems that we have is, we sell that, we talk about, our traffic flow and the people that'll see it, and you'll become, but we never get deep enough into how we're going to measure that. And I know in your current business, I'm somewhat familiar with it. You're looking for ways to set measurement devices so that you can actually measure it. So if we were, whether it's signs up at the Little League field or banners in my gym, what kind of things can I do that we could measure the result? Well, let's back up a second, because I had this problem. I was on a bigger side of sponsorship for a while, where we were spending $250,000 on a sponsorship to an organization. We always felt it was worthwhile. And the problem was, when I went to, the C-suite people and tried to explain my expense, I had trouble explaining why it was worthwhile. I felt it was, but I couldn't quantify that. So I feel it's the same at a lower level now.
Yeah, it is. And I think the question you asked me is, how do we measure that? And there's a step in between. And to me, when you say, how do we measure it, you're saying we've got the sponsorship, and then we're going to jump straight to the KPIs, the measurables. There's a step in between, which is the objectives. And the question that has to be asked is why? Why do you want that banner hanging in my gym? Before you can decide how to measure it, you've got to ask them why they want it there. What are they trying to get out of this? Are they really trying to, is there a website on that banner, or is there a phone number on that banner that they're trying to get people to call? Or is it just so that I feel good every time I walk in the gym? And until you get some clarity on that, you don't know how to measure it. Because, go ahead.
So to figure out the why, we're talking about a discussion with both sides, I'm assuming, in this conversation, because we would sit around, a boardroom, with our marketing team and justify to ourselves why we were doing it. But I don't remember having that conversation with the organization that we were sponsoring. And I'm sure they sat around the room and had their discussion, but maybe we were looking for two different things.
Well, and if look at it this way, if you sit around your boardroom and you decide why you're investing in this organization, who is best placed to help you achieve that why, to achieve that objective? The organization that you're sponsoring.
Right.
So why wouldn't you tell them? You need to tell them what you're trying to achieve so that they can help you achieve it.
Yeah, and I guess it wasn't that we were holding it back from them. It was that we didn't think to tell them. We weren't thinking it through deep enough to tell them. So we had certain benefits that we like being seen in the same arena. So that was a good thing, and we accomplished that. But it was a very nebulous objective, in that we didn't say we want to be seen in, 250 arenas. We never drilled it down to that level.
Yeah. Well, so for instance, say you've got a sports facility, and one of the parents or somebody that comes into your sports facility owns a local window washing company. And you agree on that he likes your facility, likes what you do. He's like, yeah, I'll pay $1,000 to put up a banner. And if you ask him why, he might say, well, I need more customers in this area. So is he just trying to get people to see his brand, or are you actually trying to get new customers? Well, if he makes it really clear he's trying to get new customers, then you might say, well, maybe instead of just putting up your banner and thanking you, we should hand out or make a stack of discount flyers available when people are leaving, so that they can pick those up, and you can, have a discount code. And you can then find out if you're actually getting new business from this. But if he says, no, I got all the business I can handle, I want to be able to send my team of window washers in here to use the gym or use the facility, or I want to enter a volleyball team in a league, so that everybody has fun, so that we can keep the spirits up because my guys work real hard. And so distinguishing between what that motivation is really important. In some cases it will be pretty much charity, and you'll determine that the only real objective is just that this guy's got an ego and he likes seeing his name, all over the place. Okay, well, let's stick his name on the website. Let's actually put a picture of his face and thank him all the time. Let's really stroke this guy's ego. Let's make him feel good. In fact, let's let him come in and present some awards and make him feel like a big shot. So until you really get under the skin of what the objectives are, only then can you set the KPIs. To me, the objectives in any sponsorship are the direction of travel. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? The KPIs are the definition of what success looks like.
Okay, so if we go, the objective is to have more of my customers call that window washer's business.
Yeah.
So we're trying to create call volume.
Yeah.
Then the KPI. So how would we set a KPI? Okay, so you said something about having a code or a.
Yeah.
So then anybody that called in, we'd have to collect that code from. But so the code be worth a discount. So everybody that took advantage of that discount is a result of the banner in my place. So if they bring in $2,000 worth of business and they spend $1,000 on the banner, you can say, okay, it was worth it.
So just mention Grand Slam when you call up, and we'll give you a 10% discount. Simple as that. Or when they go online to ask about it, they enter in this code, whatever, and they get 10% off. Anything like that.
Did we help you learn, grow, and improve? Leave us a review to let us know how we're doing. Thank you.
And then I'm trying to do this without doing a direct plug for your business, but so I have to keep score somehow. So, and I know that that's what your new business does, but keeping score, I'm trying to figure out, how do you keep score on both sides of like in a baseball game, both sides know the score.
Yeah. And I think when you get into bigger money, that becomes more important because there are budgets that need to be justified. And keeping score, two things about it. One, you can say, did we succeed, at the end of it? Because you might say, well, the window washing company says, over the course of a year, if I can get 50 new leads, 50 phone calls, whether it turns into business or not, if 50 people call me or whatever the number is, that's success. Okay, now we know what the target is, and let's say, okay, every month or every quarter or whatever, we're going to have a catch-up call and you're going to tell me how many you've got. Okay, first quarter's gone by, we got 17 calls out of that. Are we on target? Is that doing well? Okay, yeah, it's working. If first quarter goes by and we got 3 calls, okay, we're not on pace. We're not getting the impact. What can we do to trigger a little bit more? You know what? When we send out our, our all of our results on a weekly in our newsletter or whatever, let's add something in there. Let's put a special promotional announcement. Let's get some more attention, to try and drive that number up over the next quarter. Whatever. I mean, it's a way to do it. So the scorecard is to me, it serves two purposes. One, it's so everybody's clear from the beginning and at the end if this is working. But the other thing that's important about the scorecard is when you set up a scoring framework for sponsorship, it forces you to have these conversations that you might not have had. Like you said, when you were sponsoring a big organization, you didn't have those conversations with the organization that you were sponsoring, at least not to the degree that you probably should have. If you had a real clear scoring framework in place, you'd have called them up and said, okay, we're going through our objectives here, and we're pretty clear on them, and we want to set some KPIs. We'd like to involve you in that conversation. Here's our objectives, and here's how we prioritize them. And we think we've got some ways to measure that. Do you have any other ways to help us achieve that and to help us measure it? Be part of the conversation, because if we get to the end of the year and we've achieved all this, we're going to be really happy about maybe continuing this partnership. Now, that does tend to, in some cases, strike a little bit of fear, because the sponsor might say, well, geez, if we overshoot on our objectives, are they going to try and raise the price on us next time? And the rights holders thinking, if they don't achieve their objectives, are they going to exit? So do I really want to participate in this process? And if either side is having those fears, they really need to sense check themselves. And like that guy in the conference said a few months ago, if you're having those fears, you're not in a partnership. You're in an advertising transaction. And that's not what sponsorship is about.
I think the thing that I'm hearing the most is the communication side of it, and I just don't feel that in my experience, and we weren't in a perfect organization. We didn't have a large marketing department, so kind of we did what we want. But now in my small business, I have small sponsorships, but even in those, I'm not clear on the communications and how I'm going back. So it seems to me that your system is much more on the process than on the so I always thought sponsorship, once you got your check and you hung the banner, boom, we're done, we're good. And so now if it's not a successful process until you get to redo the sponsorship or increase the sponsorship, then you've got a different outcome.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head with that word process. In fact, that's the tagline of my company, is it's the process, because the scorecard, the framework, the technology, the calculations are all, important, but the real benefit of them is that they drive a process that often doesn't happen or doesn't happen enough. Now, we also have to be realistic, with the companies, the organizations, the facilities that you're talking to, and the ones that are probably listening to this. We're talking about smaller numbers, and they won't have a dedicated partner management team. They won't have the resources to spend as much time in it, but it's still really important to get the principles right and to say, thank you, Mr. Jones, so much for agreeing to be a $1,000 sponsor of our volleyball facility. As we go forward, I really want to understand why you're doing this and what you want to get out of it, because we want to make sure that happens. So just to have that conversation, and if all he says is, hey, you guys keep doing what you're doing, and thank me at the end of this, I'll be happy. As long as my kid's still happy coming here, you guys are doing things the right way, keep the place clean. I'm happy to be associated with you. I'm proud of that. And then maybe ask some things like, okay, do you want to use our logo in any of your marketing, or do you want whatever? I mean, you can ask questions just to show that that you care, that you're really trying to drive some benefit for them, and just learn a little bit more about their motivation.
I think in the corporate world, you and I both have spent a number of years in the corporate world, and we deal on scheduled meetings, and now most of them are Zoom meetings, but it's very much an organized, formal meeting that we're doing those things, and you prepare an agenda. But in a small sports business, the offhand casual meetings may serve the same purpose. So if once a month I stop in the office of a window washer on my way by and say, by the way, your banner still looks good. How are we doing? And that's the meeting, but it's just a one-off. I'm just happen to be driving by and I stop there, and then see if there's something that's not working. I think what you want to do, if there's a negative feeling about the sponsorship, or even if it's just $1,000, the sooner you can find out that the feeling is negative, the better off you are. Because you still have time to address it. And if it's a 1-year deal for $1,000, you want to know after a month, hey, it's not working. So we got to change it up and, add, name to flyer or website. There's so many things we can do now.
Well, and you talk about customer service, on this show and in all of your consulting dealings, how important customer service is. A sponsor is just like a mega customer, so
Right.
you got to treat them like a VIP, and think about over delivering. Okay, you've got some kind of an agreement, whether it's written on a napkin or in a formal contract. You've agreed to do certain things for them, and if you do a little bit more than is required of you, as long as that doesn't cost you a bunch of money, why not? Give them an extra plug on your social media, or name a league after them, or, put up an extra a bit of promotion or whatever, or just when the window washing guy, you probably have hired them to wash your windows at your facility. So when the guys come around to wash the windows, I don't know, give them a free drink or something,
Yeah.
make sure you thank them and tell them they've done a good job, and mention them to other people. It's just treat them like a VIP, so that they feel good.
Yeah. So I think, you used the term partners earlier, and I think the way you're approaching it is truly a partnership. You're looking out for each other, and trying to grow their business while you grow your own. And if that happens, then the likelihood of doing it over and over again is good. And I think one of the signs that you're not doing it the right way is that you don't have repeat sponsorships, or, it's like, and I've done this myself. I sell a sponsorship, put a banner up, and it's a 1-year deal. And then I call them in 4 years and say, that 1-year deal's up and your banner's still hanging there. But, but I never quantified what it was worth. So
That wasn't a sponsorship. That was an advertising buy.
It wasn't advertised. Yeah.
They bought an ad in your program, and you never changed the program, essentially.
Right. Exactly. So, okay, we're getting to the end of this. This has been great. I could talk about this. My problem right now is, as I'm looking back at my couple businesses, I'm thinking I've really screwed this up. So I've got to go back and fix some things. I've got to do better with my sponsorships. And we have some really good partners that we have working relationships with, ourselves in a local Little League. But I'm not working hard enough to maintain the partnership. That I think that's a message that is good for everyone.
I think, we've talked a lot about how to treat a sponsor, how to service a sponsor, how to look at assessing the effectiveness of a sponsorship. We haven't talked a lot about how to get sponsors, and I imagine a lot of people listening to this podcast might be curious about that as well. And I think if I'm to boil it down, the important thing for a facility or a small organization looking for essentially small change in sponsorship is first and foremost to think about, what do I actually have to offer to local businesses? How can I help them do what they're trying to do? Well, okay, I've got X number of people that walk into my facility every week. I should probably know what those numbers are. Not only total number of people, unique visitors, but also how frequently do they come in? What do I know about their demographics? Do I know, the basics of their age, their income levels? Even if I'm having to approximate and guess that, I should be able to have that at the tip of my tongue. Do I have, online transactions? Do I send out a newsletter? How many people have signed up for that, and what's the open rate on that? What about social media channels? Do I have people following that? Do I put out any kind of good content? Do people actually like it? Do they engage with it? And once you start to ask what you have to offer to a potential sponsor, then you start thinking about, okay, I've never had somebody sponsor me because I have X number of followers on Instagram. But boy, if I could take that number from, 500 to 5,000 followers, that might be of a lot more interest. So how do I do that? Well, maybe I have a competition to get my members, my participants, to create content while they're in here and, take videos and post them. Whenever you win, stand over here under this banner and post a picture of yourself as the champion, whatever. And can we get more followers? Can we get more exposure? Because even if that's not directed at a current sponsor, as you start to build those numbers, that's something you can potentially monetize. So the way you're perceived, the number of people that know who you are, that see your brand, that engage with your facility or your digital comms, all of those things can be turned into sponsorship assets. So you really have to think about not just how much money do I need, and very often that's the perspective. Okay, I need to replace this equipment, so I need $5,000 in sponsorship. So I'm going to go out and tell people I need $5,000. Don't tell them you need $5,000. Tell them what you can do for them. And then yes, if they can help you, if they agree to something, this is how it's going to impact you. But if you're just out begging, then that's charity. But if you want to ease that along, and hopefully they like you. But if you can have a good handle on what you have to offer a potential sponsor, that's going to take you so much further. Even if it's just a list of stuff that you keep in the back of your head. But if you want to turn it into a nice looking PowerPoint or something, you can. But at this level, it's just be aware of that stuff. Know what your numbers are. Know what your assets are.
Yeah, I think another thing is I think it helps to start, and it's easiest, when you go out looking for sponsorships. If you go door to door, it's boring, and that's why people hate sales. But if you just start with the people that already frequent you and like you, then it's real easy because you're just visiting friends. And being a professional visitor is kind of a cool thing. I think it works, and I don't think it becomes drudgery. So this whole managing partnerships can become fun and profitable for the organization. So,
have you ever seen
awesome.
Have you ever seen a gymnastics club or a sports facility that didn't have a member or a parent of a member that owned a business or controlled a budget of some sort?
Yeah, they're
there.
Yeah,
they're there. Treat them well,
yeah.
and they can become partners.
Yeah, so it's a great revenue stream. We will dig back in deeper how to approach and what the process is, for that first sale. On another episode, we'll dig into that. We've gone about a half hour. Before we sign off, Bruce, if someone wants to communicate with you firsthand, or they have a question for you, or they want to learn about Sponsor Lab, how can they get a hold of you?
The best way is just go to sponsorlab.biz. On there, you can read about Sponsor Lab, and there's a a response form on there, and every one of those comes directly to me. So just fill it out and say, hey, even if you want to say, I'm not interested in Sponsor Lab, but I want to talk to you about sponsorship, I'll get that message and I can get in touch with them. But the easiest way is to go to sponsorlab.biz.
So they can cut through your whole staff.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Bruce, I really appreciate you jumping in today. Dave appreciates it as well. I have no idea how he's doing with his tournament, but Dave's a heck of a coach, so I'm sure they're doing well. And we will look forward to having you on Paradigm Playbook in the future. Everyone, if you like what you're hearing, like, subscribe, whatever, click all those buttons, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks. It's been fun. Thanks.
If you know a coach, teacher, or business owner who could use our help, please refer them to us. We appreciate your support.